Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm just going to play a time lapse of one of my drawings in the background while I talk about today's topic. So this is going to be another art talk video, and in this one I want to talk about the idea of a self-taught artist. I mostly wanted to talk about what it means to be a self-taught artist, because when I started posting my artwork, my stuff online, I would always describe myself as a self-taught artist. I thought that it was probably the best way to explain to people what I am, but in a way that's a lie, isn't it? Because there is no such thing as a self-taught artist, especially nowadays, because you always learn from somebody, and nowadays with the internet and so many videos on YouTube and elsewhere, there are just so many resources where you can learn from other people. You can learn about the tools they use, you can learn about their techniques, you can learn about some of the basic art concepts, you can learn anything you need basically from other people. You just have to look for it, and you just have to be kind of patient and willing to learn. So in this video I just want to talk a little bit more about what my experience was and what process I went through, and maybe some people will be able to relate to it. I'm always happy to hear your own experiences and your own opinions in the comments. But I want to talk about how my process went, how I became this quote-unquote self-taught artist that I am today. Now, I am a child of two teachers. My father was a math teacher and my mother taught accounting, and we always had plenty of paper lying around, plenty of paper, and as well as plenty of pencils and pens. So it was only natural that I would do a little bit of drawing to, just to entertain myself, because there were no computers back then. People didn't watch TV as much, and like I said, I did a little bit of drawing. In some of my early years, I immediately showed a little bit of talent. Now, some of those early drawings were a little bit ugly, obviously. I was still a kid, but some of my teachers and some of the people around me noticed that I had a pretty decent understanding of shapes and things like that. So I was encouraged by the people to keep drawing, and I was praised for those little drawings that I did as a kid. But I never really took myself too seriously. Now, one of the things that I liked to do a lot when I was a kid, I liked to read comics a lot. I read hundreds, if not thousands, of comic books. And in my country, the comics that were popular back then were quite different than what you would find in the US and the Western world. We mostly read comics from Italy, and my favorite character was Zagor. Anyway, that was of course not the only comic that I liked. There were many others, but I would read them, but I would also try to draw them. I would try to imitate some of the artists whose comics I read, and I even tried drawing my own comics. Now, I never really got to draw a full comic, but I did some smaller illustrations, shorter comics and things like that, and that was a decent experience for me. I would learn from those other artists just by copying them, and I can tell you that there's a lot to learn from comic book artists, because what you can learn from them is the art of simplification and approximation. Basically focusing on the most important things. Focusing on the most important things in an image, in a drawing, in whatever it is that you're trying to draw. because comic book artists, they have this talent to simplify things and to draw something that looks realistic with just a few lines. And I really like that about the comic book drawing style, and I even try to implement that in some of my current drawings, even though the drawings that I do nowadays are quite a bit more detailed and realistic, and I spend a lot more time doing them than if I were just doing a simple comic. I still rarely or pretty much never do photorealistic drawings. I do fairly realistic drawings, but I still try to simplify, and I try to create an illusion of complexity and illusion of detail. And this is something that I kind of inherited from the comic book period of my career. After that, as I was growing up and as a teenager, I did a little bit of drawing and painting here and there. Again, didn't take myself too seriously. I mostly drew some animals, some airplanes, things like that. But when I was a little bit older, when I went to college and I got my first computer, I got into computer graphics and I did some digital drawing. I designed some icons. I even created some short cartoons, simple ones. And then I did some computer graphics for computer games. I did a little bit of modding. I did texture drawing. I even did a little bit of 3D modeling and a little bit of animation. So I tried all of these things, and eventually in my mid-30s I decided to go back to traditional drawing, because I just felt like traditional drawing was better for me than digital artwork, digital drawing and computer graphics. And I did a separate video of that. I'm going to put a link in the description if you want to check that out as well, where I talk about digital drawing versus the traditional drawing. So eventually I decided to go back to traditional drawing, and once I did, and this is all of course a huge digression I'm making now, I understand that, but once I did, I realized that there is a ton of content online that you can look for artistic advice and learn from other people. So there were YouTube tutorials, there were just time lapses, there were narrated videos, there was all kinds of things. And I have to tell you that I liked watching time lapses, and I think that you can learn from time lapses. People who want to learn how to draw, they normally don't like time lapses very much because it's kind of fast and they feel like they can't see what's really going on, and they think that narrated videos are far superior, which they are, that's true. But I think you can also learn from time lapses, even if there is no narrated video available. You can still learn some things from them. You can still pick up on some techniques and things like that. Even though I think time lapses, they kind of give you a distorted idea about what the drawing process actually looks like, because it just in a time lapse it just flows. Everything looks a lot of fun and very quick. But in reality, the drawing process, especially for these realistic drawings, is very slow and sometimes kind of exhausting, and it's a lot more difficult, and it's a lot more deliberate, and it takes a lot more patience. But I still don't think that time lapses are completely useless. Now, another thing that I've noticed is that you can also learn from still images. You can learn from looking at still images or photos of other people drawings. Like, for example, when I started posting my drawings online, it was mostly on Facebook at first, and I examined the artwork of other artists. I noticed that when I look at their drawings, I could see maybe I could get some insight into their techniques. I could learn how they did certain things even without watching the drawing process. I could see how they dealt with certain problems like drawing hair or skin or things like that. And I you can always find either at least some inspiration, or you can learn something by watching other people's artwork. Naturally, those narrated videos and longer tutorials are where you can really learn a lot, and I watched a ton of those videos as well before I started making my own, obviously. And I can tell you about some of the things that some of the people that I watched a lot on YouTube. One of the first, when I started getting a little bit more interested in drawing, one of the first people I watched was Mark Riley, and he's a comic book artist, but he also does some more detailed, realistic drawings and does tutorials on them. And I found his videos very useful and entertaining. After that, I watched some graphite pencil drawings of a YouTuber called Smoothie, or Smoothie7 something. He has a very relaxed style where he mostly draws landscapes, and I found his approach to drawing very useful, and I kind of like the pace of his videos. And after that, I liked watching Daryl Tank, an American artist who mostly does portraits. Now his style is for the most part completely different from mine, because eventually I switched to charcoal, which is messy and a lot faster. But he did some wonderful things with graphite. He's very patient, he's very neat, and I found his some of his concepts very useful, like for example the use of a tapered stroke and cross-hatching and things like that, in order to shade gradually and build up the value on different parts of the face gradually. He's a great portrait artist, and I'm going to put the link in the description to some of these artists if you want to check them out. I watched some of the other ones, some of the younger ones, like that girl Kirsty Partridge, I think, and I watched young Chen, Chinese artist, I think, who does all kinds of stuff: watercolor, charcoal, graphite, colored pencil. I mean, he's pretty good at everything. The only thing I haven't seen him do is sculpting, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did that as well. And I also watched Colin Bradley. That was another one. He did pastel drawings. I watched him in a phase where I was kind of frustrated with colored pencils, and I wanted to do a little bit more drawing with pastel pencils, but I didn't really like pastels or pastel pencils at the time. And it was only much later, even though I enjoyed his videos and learned from them anyway, but it was much later that I started experimenting with colored pencils on sanded paper that I really found a medium that suits me better. So my point is that for these years that I've been drawing, and before that, I watched thousands of videos of other people's time lapses and tutorials and narrated videos, and I found a lot of useful information online. So when I think about it, I don't really think I can say that I'm a self-taught artist. I've had dozens of teachers, and I still learn from other people. You know, you can learn even from artists who are maybe not a lot more experienced than you. You can learn from your peers as well. Like some of the artists I mentioned are, no offense to them, but pretty old, and they have a ton of experience. But some of the other ones are a lot younger, and you can still pick up on some ideas, or you can just get inspired to do certain things by other artists. So once again, I don't think there is such a thing as a self-taught artist anymore. And I think that that's something that a lot of my viewers can relate to, because I've done hundreds of videos and a lot of people saw them and found something useful in them, and maybe I was one of your teachers at one point. So like I said, this is a good time to be an artist. There are some difficulties and challenges as well, but when it comes to learning how to draw, when it comes to finding resources and materials, I think things are pretty good. I think it's very easy to find resources and materials, and that's just my opinion about that. Just something that I wanted to share, and something I wanted to talk about a little bit. Thanks for watching this one as well. I'm going to see you in the next video. As always, if you like my content, don't forget to subscribe, give me a like, comment on my videos, tell me what you think about this topic, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.